like someone was sitting at the table, and yeah, it's head height, same as you, basically. So, okay, cool. So,
go ahead.
Hi, I'm Will Allen. I work for HP, but what I'm doing here is representing myself as an individual technologist, not as part of Hewlett Packard. So these are my personal views. I just gave a keynote here at Robo Business, and I'm happy to talk to Roy about it and share some of my thoughts with you. The three main points that I was delivering was that robotic technologies in places like homes and offices and hotels and retail, I feel I'm missing. They're late. They wake up in the morning and go, where's my robot? There should be something here. Maybe not everybody has the feeling that they're missing, but I think they would enjoy them if they happened. We walked on the moon in 1969. It's almost 50 years downstream, and there aren't practical, affordable robotic solutions in these environments beyond like robo-vacs.
I mean, one of my key interests, I mean, for the last several years, is I've been working on this mind project called the Regolith project.
Okay.
I want to build and operate robotic vehicles on the moon. I mean, using 360 cameras and other cameras to drive around the moon virtually to telepresence.
Okay, same as, or similar to like a robot underwater working on an oil rig or something in deep sea.
I mean, from the Earth to the moon and back, it's a 3-second round trip signal.
It's not that long, and with so you could either suffer you're going to suffer the latency.
Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of lag. But the thing, when you're operating a vehicle on the moon, you're not going to be going more than 10 or 15 miles an hour anyhow, because you'd be bouncing up off the surface.
Well, and if the robot on the moon had some autonomy, like so it would like do basic collision avoidance and not let you do really stupid things, but you could still drive it, then I don't think the latency would be a big issue. So I use telepresence robots a lot. There's a little latency when they drive. I live with it. If it was 3 seconds, I'd want some help.
Right.
But I mean, more what I find annoying is if I drive into a Wi-Fi dead spot, right? And I'm in I always imagine it's like, you know, supposing I was like, my job was at NASA or JPL to run some Mars rover, and I'd hate to go to my boss and go, well, boss, I had a bad day. I drove the rover behind a rock, and it'll be 37 years before we get connected to it again. so there's still some little gaps, right? So one of the things, let me talk a little about the telepresence, because it's kind of cool. First time I used one, I fired it up. It's in the middle of the wall of a pretty big building. I had to go down to the corner to a conference room. And I literally almost ran into a colleague who was coming around a cube wall. And it was good and bad. The surprise was because I'm 6 feet tall, and the walls are about 5, but the telepresence robot is about 4.5.
Right.
So I was right next to the wall, so I just popped out of nowhere and we almost collided. So I learned, don't drive next to the walls or on the corners, go around the outside. But the other thing that was fun is I literally, as we'd say, I ran into my colleague Rihanna on the way to the meeting. So what we did, we chatted for 2 minutes. Well, if I just jump on a meeting with a Skype for Business or call in on the speakerphone, I don't move through the building to randomly encounter colleagues and friends and have these experiences. So the fact that I was moving through there and had to get from A to B was very valuable. What's a little annoying is the low-level driving. So kind of one of the things I want is taxi mode. You know, take me to the room. I want to ride along. I'll like hit the space bar if I run into Roy and want to talk to you.
Yeah, and have some autonomy that says that, okay, I'm traveling with this person, so walk with them.
Yeah, so I don't have to worry about pacing with the person. Just say, yeah, follow Maria. Right. Walk beside. I'm with Maria, and then I could talk to her, talk to other people. So I want a little autonomy, and I think the same thing could apply on your moonshot.
Right.
Would be a low-level autonomy would make it prevent you from having accidents and doing silly stuff, but you would still be in control, going where you wanted, deciding to go this way or that way, and then having the experience that would follow, which is part of what.
Basically, what I'm looking at is, I mean, it's going to have some level of autonomy, because otherwise, I mean, if I'm doing like mining and stuff and I'm just scooping up regolith and dumping it, it's going to be boring. But I mean, it would allow me to augment the decision-making processes of the telerobotic vehicle that I'm working with. And then I mean, I can jump from one vehicle to another vehicle to another vehicle.
So this is something that happened to me with the current telepresence. I was normally I feel when I'm on it, I'm in the room, I have coordinates, people look at me, I love that. I feel a little like I'm handicapped. It's hard to move. I can't open a door. I can't turn my head. It's like I have to rotate the whole body. But you do get some superpowers. So a few weeks ago we were in a meeting and somebody said, "Where's Kevin?" And then somebody else said, "Maybe he's in the lab downstairs." Well, we had a telepresence robot and I said, "I'll go check." And the people look at me like, "Huh?" for a second, and then I log off. 7 seconds later, I'm on the other robot. I look around, he's not in the lab. 30 seconds after the whole thing started, I'm back in the first room, and I said, "Kevin's not down there." And you couldn't have gotten a quarter of the distance there one way.
Right.
So, yeah, I was kind of like locally handicapped in mobility and ability to, like, I can't raise a hand and express, but I could jump to another I could teleport.
Right.
So, and the people in the room physically couldn't do that. So in some ways I'm a little disadvantaged, but there are these odd superpowers that you get, like you could jump to another, and that other mind could be on the other side of the moon or in Australia. It just doesn't matter. And so that's an interesting, I found psychologically it was interesting, and it made me feel for the first time like, oh, I got a little taste of the Star Trek transporter.
Yeah.
Right? I beamed over to the new place and then popped right back, and it was quite fun.
Right. Yeah, I mean, some of the things that, I mean, I was just thinking about is that, I mean, like with the regular collection stuff, I'm driving like a dump truck around, I'm collecting stuff, that I can jump over into a loader to load stuff into the truck and jump into the truck, drive it back to the processing facility, and then at the processing facility I can jump into a forklift operator or something like that to help unload the truck and run the processes and stuff, and so that I can change from point to point to point as the need arises.
So maybe you take the robot out, have it start digging in an area,
and
you go back and work at the mine.
The excavator's still gathering while I'm dump truck.
So I'm just kind of thinking out loud with it. So you'll want the excavator to be autonomous. Well, this is something I say about robotics in general. They don't have to be perfect. I guess my model is if I had a robot that was like a super well-behaved 4-year-old, I'd love it. And so let me give an example. If I tell the well-behaved 4-year-old, please vacuum the kitchen floor, and maybe there's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that's spilled on the floor, and they may come back to me and say, "You know, Dad, I got the whole floor vacuumed except there's a sandwich in the corner and I didn't know what to do." I'm actually pretty happy. They did their job. They didn't vacuum the sandwich, which would be a big mistake. And I'm relating this to like a robot vac, right? So, holy grail. I come back, the room's clean, the sandwich is taken care of, and there's no jelly inside the robot that's a mess. That's not going to happen this year. But what could happen is the robot could clean the room and kind of come at me and take me over and show me, "Will, I got all but this." And I would say, "Hey, that was 85% of it. You told me what was beyond your capacity, and you didn't make a mistake and like put jelly into the brushes of the vac." I would think that'd be great. So same thing, now you're going to mine the regolith. You're back here at the factory attending to that, and then you get when it outside of some set of bounds, it either runs out of stuff or isn't sure what to do about a big rock, it alerts you then. And that would be almost as good as if it never had to alert you. It's an 80-20 solution, and I think in robotics, if we realize that 80-20 can still be extremely valuable, that's a way for the technology to walk in, get used, get adopted, and not have to be perfect. But what it needs to do is not make bad mistakes that are expensive by some set of measurements that cost me time or money or waste. So one of my, let me go back for a second. I'll give the 3 big points in my keynote just to frame it. So I feel like robots are late in arriving, like in homes and offices. I think all the basic fundamental technologies are now there. It's like with electric vehicles, the big thing that was missing for years was the battery. The motors were there, the controllers were there, cars were there, roads were there. You get lithium ion and suddenly, very quickly, you get electric cars. So with robots, there's power, there's compute, there's machine learning, there's artificial intelligence. They can move safely in environments and not run into people. All the building blocks for really cool solutions are there. The development tools are still not highly integrated. They're kind of one-off. And so as an illustration of that, on the front side, I think you'll find that you have people working together from different domains, trading a lot of information to get an integrated solution. So the power management person, so the power management person is talking to if it was a vacuum, the sweeping person is talking to the room planning algorithm person is talking to somebody else about industrial design, and they're exchanging a lot of technical information back and forth. That's kind of bad. It's not efficient, but it's where the industry is. And I think, like in the U.S. automotive industry in the 60s, General Motors, Pontiac made their own engines and transmissions, Chevy made their own engines and transmissions, and Oldsmobile did. And they all said it's because we have to solve the problem as one piece. Well, I got a Ford truck now with a Mitsubishi transmission. So they've moved up the stack to where they can define an API between an engine and a transmission, and two different manufacturers can cooperate. So the engine experts don't communicate as much with the transmission experts. I mean, they talk about the interface, but they no longer have to worry about what's on the other side. So that's a modularity that comes in. That still needs to happen in robotics to make it easy to put different solutions together and more practical. That'll come because the technology comes up the stack on its own. Another headache is on the tail side is scale. So if you're going to put 50,000 or 100,000 products maybe a month into the market, which is where you're going to get low prices, and if you had the demand, it's hard to build that. If they all need to be connected to the internet, that's hard. If you're selling them in Europe, you might have to take parts back for recycling. So a little startup company here could have a very technically capable robot, but they might have a hard time. If somebody actually said, I'll take 100,000, but I'm a global company, they might not be able to fulfill that. Well, big companies, Siemens has scale, phone companies have scale, HP has scale, so I feel like that's been solved and can come through. So my point is, there's a lot of pin-up demand and need. We've got aging population demographics, people moving into cities, massive urbanization. I don't have robots at home. I need to take care of elder people. I need to be able to be somewhere else and not spend fossil fuels to get there, right? And so there's pin-up demand. All the pieces are there. So what I'm saying is when robotics bust into home and office, and I think in less than 5 years, my personal opinion, it'll be significant. It'll be like floodgates opening. It won't ease in like Walkman getting better and digital players. It's going to just explode as fast as electric cars.
I mean, I actually use robotics in my home literally every day.
Yeah, your chair, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right now my biggest problem with the chair is government oversight and government budgeting. And the thing is that cost analysis and stuff like that. People, a lot of the companies are saying, where's the money? Not, there's a need, let's fill it.
And there's a regulation. I was talking to a professor at OSU, and he had been doing some work on a robotic wheelchair, and he said it might actually be easier for him to take his work out as a robotic golf cart, because that's not regulated at all, because it's not a medical device.
Right.
And as soon as it's a medical device, it's heavily regulated, and it's this kind of funny chicken and egg, because you're going to have to get an economy of scale to get the prices down to where a lot of people can enjoy it, and maybe the chair doesn't have to be perfect to still be useful. It obviously needs to be safe, but it doesn't have to be perfect, right? And I'm sure that your chair is expensive, and it probably costs more than it should, if you know what I mean.
This chair here is about $6,000, and
I can buy a pretty nice used car for $6,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And
the
that's
thing
not
is
as
that
much.
I actually had 2 chairs that I got previously that actually work better than this, because the government keeps cutting back what they're saying, and because it's medical, they figure, okay, this is insurance, so we can charge whatever we want. So $1,300 for a joystick. $1,800. For the motor. For the motor assembly. It's insane.
It's nuts. Our daughter broke her ankle and had surgery just a few weeks ago, and we borrowed a wheelchair, not motorized, from friends. And the front wheels it's like a reinforced fiberglass hub and spoke, and one of them failed. It just broke. So, friend's chair, I better get one from the manufacturer, put it back, just like when I got it, $80. And I'm like, it's a solid rubber tire, and reinforced fiberglass is like, that's not even patented anymore. It's the way they've been making drill casings, housing since the 60s. But it's medical, and which is right, and so it's an $80. I can buy a wheel for a car for $80.
I was looking at one of the companies,
or a bicycle, which is pretty high tech.
Yeah, I was looking at one of the companies in here that makes, motors and stuff. The ones that
the zero lash, the whole.
Well, the thing is that $450 for just this tiny little, actuator motor that could be replaced by what you find in a, God forgive the word, a $10 dildo.
Yeah, well, maybe there might be a little more to the motor, but I understand what you're saying. And we did. So some of it is how much there's a balance between how do you solve the problem like in mechanical domain versus electronics. Right. And I'm not an expert in this. That in those motors, I used to work on printer control systems, and the early ones we had used stepper motors, which were relatively speaking expensive, but easy to control. Go 73 steps. That's so many degrees, right. And it stops and it won't move. And one of our engineers figured out they could put in essentially a lot less expensive DC motor with an encoder and a nice feedback loop, right. Which all costs less, sort of a crappier system mechanically, but because it had this nice electronic control loop on it, we actually got great performance out of it. Right. So and at slew speeds it was smoother. It didn't have this right. velocity ripple, so it actually worked better and cost less. We had to make a non-recurring engineering expense of designing the feedback loop, which was basically a bunch of software. Well, the great thing about programs is the manufacturing of software is pretty easy. You just duplicate the bits, right? So you do the work once and you're done, and we save the bill of materials cost. The last point I was going to make on the robotics, and then we can kind of range is, okay, so they're missing in a lot of places. The enabling technologies and building blocks are there. All the solid impediments are gone. It's kind of like waiting for it to flow. I think, especially at home, but even in the office, robotics can be very social, and people can make emotional bonds to it. And when I gave the presentation, I had a picture of a little girl hugging a puppy. But I talked to like an industrial psychologist, and she was telling us military bomb squads would bond with their bomb diffusing robots if they use them every day for a couple of weeks. And the bomb diffusing robots, they don't look like people, they're not cute, they look like little tanks. But after a few weeks, and I said, well, what do you mean bonding? She said, well, like if it breaks, they get upset and they really get annoyed until it gets fixed. And if like their Jeep breaks, they just get, it's like, oh heck, no big deal. Yeah, and when the robot breaks,
of their body.
Yes, and they don't want a different robot to replace it. They want their robot fixed, like their dog broke its leg, right? Well, I'll give you another dog. It's not my dog. I'm like, wow, these tough bomb disposal soldiers bond emotionally with something that doesn't look like a person. So you start getting robots in the house, and there's Cosmo, Jibo, these social robots. People will bond with them, which is really cool if it goes well, but I think it puts a responsibility on the manufacturer, the integrator, to not take advantage of people, but rather empower the customer in the end. And my final thesis is, if you're empowering the person at the end, that guides your business objectives. It'll give you a longer enduring value, because you can't commoditize the relationship. You can commoditize the components. And it's socially good. So that was kind of the final call, was let's make sure that when we're putting these robots into people's lives and they're actually embracing them and coming to live with them and socially getting engaged, let's make sure we're always empowering the people and helping them do more. So we saw last night in the, what do they call it, Pitchfire, right? Laura Day was talking about Modi, which is a little robotic device to help people develop better habits, like exercising more consistently or stopping smoking or whatever it is. And it gives you tactile, audible, and haptic feedback when you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. It helps you along with this. And I thought, wow, there's the perfect illustration. The whole point of that product is empowering you. Right. Now, a robotic vacuum cleaner might not empower you to change a social habit, but it could empower you to have freedom to do something else with your time. And there's no reason you can't smile and think it's kind of humorous when it's operating, as opposed to it just doing a job in the background.
Yeah, well, the thing is, personally, I'm looking forward to when it gets to the point where people actually have social bonds with their robots and stuff. Because, when I'm going down the street, getting on the bus and stuff, saying hello, have a nice day, all this kind of stuff, having sort of a conversation with the robot. Whether or not it's cognizant or not. I'm building a relationship with it.
We name our cars in our family.
Yeah.
And I talk to them.
Last night, I was talking with a gal in the after party that's from Australia. She was looking for some robots that she could use out there in a farming environment. And she's hoping to find some stuff here. And I'm thinking that a lot of the telerobotic type stuff, I mean, you put a 360 camera on a rover that you either fly or drive out into a remote location. I mean, you could fly out, I mean, monitor what's happening with the animals and stuff.
Well, and maybe it's the same thing where it can do some autonomous stuff, alert you if there's irregularities where you need to provide input, and then you're not dealing with it every second.
I mean, exactly. That's what I was getting at. Was, I mean, having it say, okay, I need you to go check what's going on over in the back 40, and it'll go back and do its recording and do stuff, and I mean, get back to you if there's some anomaly that it needs to bring to attention.
Let's acknowledge these nice people that have walked up for a second.
No, go ahead. But your presentation about the interaction with the different genders.
You want to talk to me about that?
Yeah, I had a really similar experience with the Beam robotics thing. I'll follow up with that.
Okay.
And I'll follow up. If you send me an email, I'll follow up. And
Absolutely. Or maybe in 5 minutes if you're
we're going to go into the room, or are you going to be?
I'm actually on the stage there too.
Okay, well,
And then I'll follow up with you after that. Okay, excellent. Thanks.
Personally, I actually think that would, I mean, interact well with, I mean, our conversation, because we're talking about social interaction and I mean, robotics on a personal level rather than an industrial level.
Yes, right.
And I mean, having the social interaction, and I mean.
But think about, and even like if you paid someone to clean your house and they arrived, you'd say hello, Tom, or whoever the person is. I mean, you might not become friends, but you would at least know each other, and they would ask how you were doing, and after a few times, you'd probably know, oh, Tom's dog's getting old, but he's going to get a new puppy, and he's excited about it, and you're excited too. So that's why I was saying, if you have a robot that cleans your toilet or vacuums, you still, it would be, if there were two products to choose from, and one just did the job, and one did the job and gave you a little bit of a relationship, that's going to be more desirable. That's my theory. Is that would sell more. People would want it.
Also, having some AI algorithms in this stuff. So I mean, your house cleaning robot. I mean, you get home, you say, okay, hi Papa, or whatever you call it, and it realizes you're in a bad mood, and it says, okay, I mean, what can I do to help your mood? I mean, let me dry your bath, let me change lights.
Or maybe it knows that when you're feeling down, if it puts on James Brown and he goes, I feel good, you smile, right? But somebody else, maybe they're in a bad mood or they have a migraine, what they want is lights down and quiet. Yeah, but let's have it be your friend.
Yeah, building an avatar for a smartphone. And you've actually got, I mean, a virtual avatar that can run around, or let's say you've got, an avatar that you use for your home. Okay. You've got, say you're an elder person, you've got family elsewhere. I want to check up on grandma.
Right.
You log into the avatar and say, hey.
So I'll tell you a story. When recently this summer, at work, we placed a telepresence robot experimentally, at my wife's parents' house, and they're 79 and 80. We did it for about 8 weeks. See how it, and they're quite active. We called them every Sunday, and it was interesting because they put the charging station by the front door just because there was a space, no particular reason. But so Phil, the father-in-law, would answer the robot when I called. And he would say, come on in, because I was near the door, and he would walk down the hallway, and I would follow him in the living room. And my in-laws, they would sit on the couch, and they would be relaxed and have a cup of coffee. Much better than a Skype call where you're kind of crowded in front of the computer. And I realized the Skype call happens in the office, which is a place where you work. But the robot, we could roll it into the living room and go to the place where you naturally socialize. So it was a much more relaxed engagement. And we also noticed that my wife's folks were dressing up. They were putting on nice clothes like we were coming over to visit. And it was really cool. And we did this 4 or 5 weeks. Then they got in the car and drove to Indiana and back for 2 weeks on a big road trip. And we didn't do it, after which, and then we didn't really feel like it kind of lost the energy. But my wife and I also felt like we really got a quite good understanding of how well they were doing. And they're getting along well. But if they were struggling, maybe not as mobile or agile, we would have seen and known that without kind of watching them or anyone feeling like they were being watched. We would have been able to detect, hey, somebody's not, their mobility is getting to the point it might be risky. Let's let's work something out before we have a problem. And it was, I just thought it was so cool. We closed the distance from Oregon to Colorado for, you know,
Right.
and it pulled our family together.
Yeah. Something else that I was just thinking, someone has a falling accident. They can't get up to answer the phone or to call for help. But someone, I mean, family member or ADT or someone else, I mean, realizes that there's what's going on. I mean, ADT, it's only going to go to a call box or a phone. I mean, they can't go around and look around the property to see where are you at. I mean, there's
well, and the other thing, and maybe they. You're actually playing a game with the grandkid, and you're rolling around on the floor. You know, the sensor alerted because there were people on the floor moving, but there isn't a problem. Well, we don't need to roll an ambulance then, spend a lot of money, take an important asset out of service. What you need to do is say, oh, it's not an issue. Well, the robot can move around and help someone determine that. And there's so much you could do, right? You can have, it can do that kind of security stuff at night. In the day, it can be a social telepresence robot, and maybe at some point it's got a vacuum module on it, or it could come and
plug into an accessory.
And I think of this 80-20 thing again. Like if I'm doing a project on my car, sure, someday the robot will take the carburetor out. But you know what? If it just rolled up next to me, had the tools I wanted on top, and had the little YouTube video playing of the person walking me through this repair, that would be valuable. That would make it a lot. I would have more fun. I could get the job done. I'd make less mistakes, and I didn't have to have a robot that was so complicated that it could actually manipulate. Sure, it could do that at some point down the road, but we can bleed these things, as my colleague Shannon says, we can bleed them in bit by bit into our lives and get value out of them in small increments.
Right. Tell them about the ice cream store from your business meeting.
Okay, and then I probably have to run and prep for my next. So my boss was having a birthday at HP, and we set up a surprise party, and I think on his calendar he had a meeting with his boss or something, and he shows up, and everybody's like, oh, hey, happy birthday, and we're going to go outside and have some cake, ice cream, and sodas. I was attending on a telepresence robot because I live in Oregon. 3 of my colleagues, when we were outside, would jokingly show me their ice cream bowl and say, here, Will, you want some ice cream? And at first it was kind of fun, but by the 3rd one I realized it's actually bothering them a little bit. And so I was working from home, I went to the kitchen and got a popsicle. And the 4th person comes up and says, hey, you should have some ice cream. And I said, I've got a popsicle. I got a huge smile because we were together doing something you didn't ordinarily do at work, which is kind of have sweets and candy, right? And I think if I had a cup of coffee, it wouldn't have been the same because we have coffee at work all the time. So even though we were physically distinct, I didn't have the same exact thing. We had something that logically was similar. We were both stepping out of work, eating something sweet, having a little festivity for 20 minutes before we went, back to the grindstone, as it was. It was a really wonderful experience. But I would have never predicted that I needed to kind of participate physically as they were over the remote distance. So that was something that I think you kind of have to just experience it and then see what happens. So part of what I've learned with these telepresence spots is that the social interactions aren't defined. I'll be on it, people will pick it up and move it, and they'll turn it, for fun, and they'll point me at the wall with my face to the wall. And physically, if someone picked me up and moved me at work, they get fired. It's not okay to push people around. But with the telepresence spot, the social norms are unknown. And so, a little part of me feels, well, I'm not super comfortable with you pushing it around, but I'm thrilled to be at the edge of technology and realizing that we have to learn interaction rules for these things, and they don't really exist, which to me is really fun because I like tech and the new wave, and right, that is the leading edge, right? We don't have a precedent. We experiment, we do some things that are good, we do some things that are stupid, and then we learn.
Okay. Is there an email address where people can, ask you questions?
If someone just wants to send something to me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Will Allen, the one that Hewlett Packard, or they could just go Will, W-I-L-L, Allen, A-L-L-E-N, at hp.com, and I'll respond. I'd love to talk. If it's tech, I'm always interested.
Fantastic. Yeah, this is Roy from the newsbubble.com here at the HP Business Expo 2016 here at the San Jose Convention Center. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you in the next bubble.
Thanks, Roy.